Vicki Hogarth, and welcome to Southwest Magazine. On Sunday, February 25th, at 1:30 to 4 p.m., the town of St. Andrews is hosting a mental wellness community conversation at the Heather Curling Club in the W.C. O'Neill Arena. Here to talk to us about it today are mental health advocate Matthew Dickson and counselor for the town of St. Andrews, Annette Harland. Thank you both for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Matthew, I know this was an idea you presented to council. I'd love to start off with just talking about how you came up with this idea and why you think it's so important.
So back in the fall, I was sitting there thinking, and this idea popped in my head of a mental health town hall. And we've been talking about mental health a bit over the years. Bell Let's Talk had its campaign in 2010, the first one. That was the first sort of real mainstream thing of let's try to talk about mental health because it's been swept under the rug for so many decades. And so we talked about it for so many years, and then when the pandemic happened, where we were trying to talk about it for a decade or so, and then in 2020 with the pandemic, we started talking about mental health like it was okay to talk about. But all those years, for decades, people were talking about mental health, but in small groups like a mental health group or whatever, just one-on-one conversations, all against this sort of hostile outside world. Everyone's, you can't talk about mental health because people might think we're going to hurt them or something like that. And so I was thinking in the last fall, well, why don't we have a town hall, get everybody together from all groups, not just like a mental health group or one-on-one conversations, all groups, the entire town, everyone, and make it an actual public conversation, because we haven't been doing that through the pandemic. I mean, the pandemic is 4 years old now. I can't believe that, but it's why can't we just start talking about it? Because we still, the last 4 years, have been talking about it just sort of one-on-one or in certain groups. I mean, to a certain extent. Mm-hmm. And the other thing was that I thought, well, we have to rely. There's a man, his name's Shekhar Saxena. He's from Harvard. He spoke at the UN. He said every country, when it comes to mental health care, is a developing country. So there's that. We are trying to get our mental health system working better, and we are talking about that. That's great. There's lots of conversations going on. But I thought there must be something we can do for ourselves here in St. Andrews. We're kind of a neighborhood for ourselves. Something we can do. We have to rely on St. Stephen, St. John, the province for some mental health resources. But there must be something we can do for ourselves in some way to and sort of rally ourselves together around this. Mm-hmm. And that was my idea. Town halls are nothing new. They've been around for centuries. They work. Mm-hmm. And just it's not a hard concept to grasp. And I thought, well, it probably wouldn't be that hard to put on either. It's not too hard to find a room, get everyone in there, and just hash it out for a couple hours. So,
and February is such a particularly hard month. We think of that as one of the higher suicide months, things like that. So it's fitting that you're doing this in the month of February as well. Annette, I'd love to know why the town is not only supporting this, but it's become such an integral part of this town hall.
So when Matthew presented to council in October, we discussed it. We discussed the possibility, and we agreed that it was a tremendous opportunity for us as a community to get behind something like this. So we developed a small organizing committee. There's myself, Councillor Steve Neal, and Councillor Jamie Hurdle, as well as Lisa Cheney from CMHA, Canadian Mental Health Association, and Muriel Jarvis, a community member. So we started talking about what would this look like, what do we want, what's the desired outcome, and how would we put it together. And one of the things that we wanted to do is create the environment for people to come together and have the conversation. The ultimate goal is, what could we, if we were a truly inclusive, supportive community, what would that look like? So the event itself is going to be a brainstorming opportunity for us to look at ideas, understand some people's experience, talk about what some possibilities might be for us. And there's all kinds of things that we could be doing potentially to enhance us as a community becoming the most the healthiest that we could be and the most supportive that we could be. What we know, it's interesting what Matthew said earlier, what we know is the World Health Organization, they said there is no health without mental health. And that's one of the, we know how important it is, how important mental health is in terms of our overall health and the link between mental health and physical health. And we know what some of the statistics are. But unfortunately, people who struggle with mental health issues often struggle in silence. Mm-hmm. And if we're going to address this as a community, then how do we create the conversation so that we can take a look at it and what we can do about it?
Stigma obviously plays such a huge role in people's lives when they're suffering from mental health issues. Is that part of the goal of this, Matthew, too? Is people to find out what resources are out there, what the conversation is in the community, but also to reduce stigma by making it a community event?
Yeah, we want to, my idea was to have sort of rally the troops, things not guerrilla style warfare or anything, but just things we can do ourselves that are simple, fairly simple. I mean, maybe we might, when people get talking, we might think of something that's more complex, whatever, that would be good. But I'm at first just starting thinking of simple things we can do. And also just letting people actually have conversations in public. That's another thing we want to have as part of this. There's a half-hour break in the middle specifically made to get people just talking with each other about mental health in a group setting, not an isolated like mental health group sort of setting. And I mean, how many times have people walked by someone walking their dog and they may not know, and here's a situation where, well, we can talk about that now. It's okay. And
what do you think the structure will be like for, it's a 2.5 hour, you said break in the middle, refreshments are served. Yeah. Is it still developing? I guess this will be the first one and maybe possibly one of many, but how do you see the event taking place?
So we have a guest speaker, Leslie Bartlett, is going to talk about her mental health journey. Matthew's going to say a few words. And then Muriel Jarvis is going to take the participants through a facilitated discussion, so some brainstorming about what some opportunities might be that we could engage in as a community. There will be some resource material available at the event. We are also going to have, as you said, a break and some refreshments, but Sunbury Shores is sponsoring an art event so that we can take a break. People can do and have an opportunity to do some art with Sunbury Shores if they so choose. But in the end, we want to come out with a couple of priorities that we as a community can move forward with. That's the hope, absolutely. And
what would your advice be to someone who's maybe on the fence about, I'll start with you, Matthew, but Annette, I'd love to hear from you too. Someone who's maybe on the fence about coming. Sometimes when it's your first time participating in something like this, it can be daunting, the idea of walking into a room and not knowing what to expect. But what would your advice be to someone who's watching this at home and thinking about coming, but still not sure?
I'm gonna let you answer that.
So we're looking for people to participate in whatever way they would like to participate. If somebody just wants to come and listen and have a cup of coffee, that's great. Please come. If you are someone with some lived experience and you want to or choose to share some of that experience, that's great, or family members or friends of people who have lived experience. Or if you just care. If you just care and want to do something for your community, come and let's join the conversation and see where this can go. I mean, Matthew talked about the pandemic, and we know that in the last 10 years, rates of depression and anxiety have more than doubled. And while we are coming out of the experience of the pandemic, we're still not there. People still feel isolated. It's still hard sometimes to re-engage. So this is an opportunity for some people to come out and re-engage with their community.
And sometimes I think we're not even aware when we're going through a mental health issue, or even someone close to us, because we can bottle it up, or like you said, in the pandemic, things were like being in a pressure cooker at times.
Absolutely.
And then you factor in the online world we live in today, and that adds another layer of pressure.
Totally.
So these mental health struggles that I think at one point people used to think only affected a certain few, it's becoming, and that's thanks to conversations like this, where we realize how many of us are affected on some level, be it extreme or just minimal, by mental health issues.
Absolutely. So it's interesting, in 2019, the Center for Addictions and Mental Health, they did a survey. 75% of the respondents said that they would not tell their employer or a coworker that they were struggling from a mental health issue. 75%, that's huge. And that still exists today. People are worried about being judged. They're worried about the stigma that's attached. They're worried about being treated differently. You know, it's easier for people to talk about a physical health issue than it is for them to talk about a mental health issue. And we really need to change that.
I can even say that from my own profession, other journalists, even if they're, let's say, covering a story that's very important to them, they're always worried about if they address their own issues, oh, maybe I'll be taken off those assignments I really want. They'll think it's too stressful, so I better bottle it up. And that still, journalists you'd think would know better than that. That's what we like to tell ourselves. But really, when it's in your own life, it sometimes becomes a complicated issue to address.
And it just perpetuates the issue. And so what we want to do is stop that.
Matthew, I know, go ahead.
One of the things we were talking about sort of came up in our meetings over the last so many months. Well, the St. Andrews is a age-friendly community. There's I don't know if we've got certification for that.
We do.
So we got, one of us, I forget who, got thinking about, well, what about mentally friendly, mental wellness friendly community? And I've gone on the age-friendly provincial and national websites for Canada. I've thought of maybe reaching out to them at some point, or we as a town could do that, and just say, like, how do we sort of do the same thing but for like a mentally well community? I don't know if that would ever happen, but we think it might be a good idea.
You're definitely onto something. I remember being presented with a study a few years back about communities across New Brunswick, and Caraquet did very well on so many levels, and part of it had to do with their expansive community center. And so having these conversations really does, and your mental health is so, as Annette can probably tell better than me, connected to your physical health as well. I'm wondering, Matthew, since you just went on a cross-Canada journey about mental health, riding your bike across Canada, representing people with schizophrenia and showing the possibilities of how a life can be well lived when you are struggling with mental health. What was it like when you had those conversations with people across Canada? What's the change in the mood from when you start to when you finish? Just because I think that would speak to the vibe of the events that you'll be hosting here.
Yeah, it's I couldn't utter the word schizophrenia out loud in public, even here in St. Andrews, for like 30 years. And last spring, just before I was going to head out to do the trip, down at the Honey Beans coffee shop, I said the word schizophrenia out loud so that random people, strangers, could hear me if I said it. And I said it. It was the first time I could actually do that. It was such a deep response in me for 30 years not to say the word in public. And anyway, I said the word, and I'm like, I can't believe I said that. That took 30 years. I looked around, and nobody was even paying attention. Anyway, so biking across Canada, I was saying it to complete strangers. Throughout my entire recovery, I had to sniff somebody out for a while before I tried. If I had to work with them, for example, I tried to get that off pretty quickly to let them know I've got this disease, but I still would sniff people out first. I just didn't say it willy-nilly. And anyway, so on the trip, I was forced to talk to complete strangers about it, and sometimes I would say within a few sentences that I had schizophrenia. Other times I just would say that I'm raising funds for the Schizophrenia Society and leave it at that. And the response, no one gave me a hard time. I'm sure if I met every single 40 million all the Canadians, I might have found some people who might have given me a hard time, but all the people I met, oh, great cause. I got that. Oh, great cause. Good for you. Way to go. Thumbs up. And I usually got the same two responses, the same responses I got for 30 years when I told somebody I had schizophrenia. I don't know much about it, or I know someone who has it. And it was very refreshing. And it's nice to be able to talk about it.
And when you open up, I imagine that the reverse can happen too. That I feel like you know everything about me because you're so open with me, I tell you everything. But did you find that with audiences as well? When you open up about your own struggles, or even if it's just anything that's on your mind, did you find that people received that with also presenting their own concerns?
Yeah, it's because of what I've been through, you're just forced to deal with horrible stuff for a really long time, and it just becomes a part of you. And because I think it just humbles you a lot, it makes your eyes more open to what other people are going through. And I have, like you said, like other people will come up to me and tell me things because I've shared or whatever. It opens the door, and it's really wonderful. Some people, I've read that some people who go through horrible things, whether it's mental illness or whatever, some people never want to talk about it, or some people always want to talk about it. And I'm in the second group. I always want to talk about it. Not always, but that's an exaggeration. But we want to talk about it. A lot of people who went through the war vets never wanted to talk about what they went through, a lot of them. But times were different back then. Some of them were probably dying to talk about it, but couldn't. I don't know. But it's when you talk to somebody about what you're going through, it's amazing. It really is, to be able to share that.
Yeah, it's about authentic connection, right? So if we open ourselves up and allow ourselves to be a little vulnerable and have an authentic conversation, that connects us to people in a much deeper way. And really, that's what we want as a community. We want to be a connected, supportive, caring community.
Annette, what's your hope for this? Not just this event, but in general, how this could affect the town, and do you see it potentially being a series of town halls on mental health?
Well, it's interesting because we've talked about that at the organizing committee, where do we go from here? And really, some of that will be determined on Sunday based on the outcomes of the event. Our hope is, though, that we will identify some priorities that a group of people can continue to work on. Or that we identify some gaps that we might need to look at. So, for example, there are training opportunities that communities can embark on. Assist training, suicide prevention training, understanding mental health, so that people feel more comfortable in using language and feeling comfortable in being approaching people about these subjects. So we want to look at what's the appetite here in this community. How can we take this further? Where can we go from here?
And we think we want sort of the group, the people there, to sort of guide where it goes.
Absolutely.
When I first had the idea, I thought, well, maybe we might need a second town hall or a third town hall to hash things out. Right now, I mean, maybe that'll happen, I don't know, but we're kind of thinking maybe a committee might be formed, who knows. But we want sort of the community to take ownership of it as not sort of forced upon. So. And
for people that are watching right home right now, what's the process for getting involved? Is it, I know that you register, I think by calling town hall or emailing?
That's right. So just 529-5120 or town@townofstandrews at gmail.com or .ca. So please register just so that we can have an idea around numbers. But if anybody at the last minute wants to decides that they're free or is interested on Sunday afternoon, please come. We would really like to see people.
The other thing I just want to mention is that my idea at the beginning was, well, this is good for St. Andrews. Other towns could do the same thing. And on my YouTube channel, I've made a video, saying, challenging, whatever word you want to use, for other communities to do the same thing. We're hoping that this. if my idea works and it goes well, which it seems it probably will, we're hoping, that maybe other communities can follow what we do. We thought of maybe having a guidebook to write up how we did it so other communities could do the same thing. So.
Wow. How have you seen in your lifetime, Matthew, and Annette, I'd love to hear from you too, mental health and the conversation around it changing? You touched on this a bit earlier. And what do you think those shifts were that made us get to the place we're at now, where we're able to have, I don't remember anything like this in my community when I was a kid. So it's very beautiful to see this happening now. But were there pivotal moments in your own journey that you noticed the world was changing?
The Bell Let's Talk campaign was a big one in 2010. Robin Williams passing, I forget what year that was, 2014, I can't remember.
8 years ago, maybe? 9?
Yeah, I forget, but that was, I remember reading some large media companies not take on it, but blurb on it, and they were saying, people were watching the news and all of a sudden everyone was talking about mental health. It was just on all the channels, everyone was talking about it. And I thought, well, great, maybe now we can talk about mental health totally. And it's sort of, after that faded more, and then with the pandemic 2020, it's pretty much wide open. Some diseases, schizophrenia, one of them, and others, some other mental illnesses, I mean, you can't talk about as much, and I'm trying to change that for my own one. But mental health in general, I think it's a lot of leapfrogging, things built on each other. But Robin Williams was the first one where everyone was sort of talking about it worldwide. So,
and I think as a society, we are more health conscious. So, overall, we are more health conscious. And we are starting to make the link between physical health and mental health. So I think that has helped us to be able to engage in conversation. I mean, but you're right, for a long time, if you struggled with depression or anxiety, there was often a thought, just pull up your socks and keep moving, right? Not really acknowledging the true impact on the individual. So I think social media has helped us to understand to a greater degree how this impacts people on a day-to-day basis.
And I'm just thinking now too, with social media and YouTube, so many influencers got into like health. They're working out, or all these physical health things, and food. There's so many more people talking about it online that over years and years now, that might have helped us talk about mental health as well, just the whole health conscious thing.
And I know, Matthew, just from knowing you and being friends with you, you've really shaped my understanding of schizophrenia on a level that so much I didn't realize I didn't know until I met you. And I think there's also things like addiction that we can see in Southwest New Brunswick right now that we do need a greater understanding of, so that we can have empathy. So I feel like that people will get a lot out of this, even if it's maybe not a personal mental health concern. It might be illuminating to so many people to touch on different areas of mental health that they haven't really considered from other people's perspectives before.
Right.
Well, I thank you both so much for taking the time to come sit down with us today and tell us more about it. Do you have any final thoughts before we close the show?
There's food. If anything, come for the food.
Absolutely, there's food, but yeah, please just come. Even if you don't feel you want to say anything, just come and listen.
Okay. Well, again, thank you both so much for sitting down with me today, and I'll see you on the 25th. We won't be bringing cameras out, just so people feel comfortable, just so they know that at home.
Great. Thanks, Vicki.
My guests today have been Matthew Dickson and Annette Harland. The Mental Wellness Community Conversation, again, will take place February 25th from 1:30 to 4 p.m. at the Heather Curling Club inside the W.C. O'Neill Arena. I'm Vicki Hogarth. Thank you for watching Southwest Magazine.
Southwest Magazine is a news and public affairs production of CHCO Television.